Sweet surrender as I love, serve, and remember.
Topic today is no approval needed. And this is such an interesting phrase because it can be used in two different ways. So I'm going to say the sort of the negative phrase first. No approval needed. I know what I think. I don't care what you think. I don't need to care what you think. I know what I think, and I'm just going to do what I want to do. Like this place of I approve of myself and forget everybody else, and that's a wonderful way to isolate ourselves from so many other people because I approve of me and forget you. And so this can happen. Well, actually, I heard this. I loved, she's an English professor, a college English professor. Her name is Julie Batten, and she has this phrase. She's just said this one sentence in a whole speech, but it just caught my attention. And she said, we're at a time where we are constantly unbelonging ourselves and unbelonging other people. Isn't that interesting? Just really captured me. We are unbelonging ourselves and unbelonging other people. So in terms of unbelonging other people, it can happen, be as slight as, someone doesn't smile at you, they just sort of gruffly look by you, or they don't nod, or you go to a cash register and they're kind of rude to you and like, oh, forget them, we just unbelong them. They're not part of me. Or even coming to the church, someone's not very nice to you, or they're not talking to you. You don't think that they're talking to you for whatever reason, and you unbelong them. They're not part of me. Like we find ways to unbelong others. And sometimes it just takes the slightest thing, and sometimes it's, well, if they don't agree with me, if they don't think the way I think, that's them and this is me. They don't get to, if they don't agree with me, they're not in my world. So you got to think like me, or you're not part of me. And then it can go as far as shaming. Well, let me just say, one of the things that come up, we do this process called visioning about what do we need to release. And I would say one of the most universal things I've heard in the 30 years I've been doing it is I need to release judging people. And so I say we because this is something we all do, but then and judging is this unbelonging. When we judge them, we keep them at a distance. And that judgment can go as extreme. I'm saying we, because no one's perfect. We're all in this together. But we can go as far as shaming people, saying things that are cruel. And I think some of you probably have seen this TED Talk too. It came out, I believe, in 2015. Monica Lewinsky's TED Talk. Has anyone seen that one? Yeah? No? So if you haven't, it's really powerful, TED Talk. And she talks about her time in 1998. Falling in love with her boss and wishing she hadn't. And she said, people make mistakes, but mine was this was the first instance of it becoming like a global issue. Her pictures everywhere. Global shaming. She said she had at one point to sit in an office and listen to, they had taped, unknown to her, about 20 hours of her conversations on a phone. And it was the year before, and she's hearing so she has to sit and listen to herself for 20 hours. And she said, I was, talking about being in love and then having heartbreak. I was churlish. I was uncouth at times. I was silly. I had there are just a lot of things that were just so incredibly shaming. And I have to sit and listen to it in front of these people, listen to myself saying these things. And then those tapes got out and started being played on TV. So I'm hearing myself at my worst. Total shame of myself of saying this. And now everyone in the globe can hear these, and this is with the President of the United States, so it's everywhere. Imagine the intensity of that shame, and all the people who participate in that not even realizing that this is an actual human being that is feeling it. And then she said, fast forward to 2010, and I'm sorry I don't remember his name, but it was a young man whose roommate, now the social media, hers was internet, but no social media, now social media is out, and there's a young man whose roommate secretly films him having sex with another man, and then they post it on social media. He's brutalized and bullied, and so he jumps off George Washington Bridge, and then she sees her mother get re-traumatized because all the years that they spent with Monica, always worrying, is she on the edge? You know, how far is this shame going to take her? This is our culture that we have. And she was highlighting, this was a talk, I think she said, like I said, I think it was 2015, highlighting the power of social media and the internet to really hurt people if we choose to. Why do we choose to participate in tearing people down and feeling like they're so distant from us, we don't even think that they're impacted by it? One of the words that keeps coming to me of why we do this is we feel threatened. This intensity of whether it's a small judgment, micro judgment, or a big, painful shaming, public shaming like she experienced and others have experienced, is we're threatened in some way. And then we look at when we disbelong to ourselves, when we stop belonging to ourselves, and that's the parts of ourselves that we want to disown, that we think are just not what we want anyone else to see. Those parts of us threaten us, because if we see that, people will abandon us or reject us or dismiss us, but in fact, we often are doing that to ourselves. We are abandoning those, not our whole self, but the parts we don't like, abandoning ourselves, rejecting ourselves, dismissing ourselves, or not even knowing it's there, just sort of always putting it off to the side. Because the shame is so great in us that is part of who we are, and we feel so much shame that it is threatening. That shame of, and the key here is that we think that we are inherently, whatever this is, we are inherently worthless. We are inherently bad. We are inherently not enough. And we don't want to feel that. So we will use our mind and create conscious thoughts of our goodness and our wholeness and push away the parts of us that feels unworthy, because it's so overwhelmingly threatening, because that will devastate us. That will absolutely isolate us from everyone else in the world once they see how unworthy we are. So this idea of threat to our divine, to who we really are. And so we see how important it is to know what our true divine inheritance is. That we are not inherently bad. We are inherently divine. That we are not because anyone said it or because it sounds nice, but it's an actual reality, that we are made in the image and likeness of pure spirit. We are made in the image and likeness of pure love. We are made in the image and likeness of pure beauty. We are made in the image and likeness of creativity, of abundance, of joy, of bliss, of peace. That is who we really are in our absolute sense. That is who we are. That is our divine inheritance, and nothing of this world can ever touch it. To be in this world but not of this world, that we are absolutely free all of the time to really, really deeply and profoundly know that that is our divine inheritance. That is who we are inherently. That is who we are inherently. All the other things are passing, temporary, but our divine inheritance is eternal and forever. And then I love this phrase that Ken Wilber brought forth, which is or concept, which is transcend and include. So sometimes, I'm sure we've all heard of the phrase of spiritual bypass. And so we know our divine inheritance, but we can still bypass the ugly side. And so what we want to do is transcend and include. And so we want to transcend it, know we are this divine nature that can never be hurt, harmed, or endangered, that we are always whole, perfect, and complete, that nothing can ever touch the purity of love that we are and the peace that we are. Nothing of this world can ever touch that. And that transcendent self actually includes all of our human self. So all those places where we feel ugly and not enough and not unworthy, that we allow that purity of love and peace and joy to enter into those darkest places of our beingness. that's when we start to begin to know freedom. We don't have to push anything away. So we want to transcend and include, and that, of course, requires feeling. We feel into the pain. We feel into the shame. We are able to open up and feel it and talk about it, and a healing starts to happen. And we do this with other people as well. When we're ready, we do the healing of being able to open up our resistance to the people that were unbelonging, and saying, even though they might think differently, even though they don't do things that I like, they're still not other. There's still only this one power and this one presence. So I want to talk just a moment, because I think this is a really important part on the healing journey, about malice, intentional malice, and unintentional pain. So there are people who are intentionally malicious, and what that means is they know what they're doing, and they're not choosing to go on a healing path to heal themselves of whatever that caused their maliciousness, but they are choosing to continue on in that maliciousness on a pretty fairly consistent basis. It's not like a one-time deal. They continue to show up. They know that it's a problem, but they're not willing to do the intense work. So that is a much harder thing to forgive, and I would say that's culturally, when we have cultural, when we see things and we know that it's bad, and people aren't willing to do the work collectively to heal, and individually, not collective, and to not do the heal. That's where we have boundaries. This is a really important part. We love everybody. Compassion and empathy is the healing tool of shame. So any shame or pain that you're feeling in, the way to heal it is through compassion and empathy. But it's hard to feel compassion and empathy with maliciousness, intentional maliciousness. So how do we be with that? We have boundaries. So if my heart is open and I see that this person is unwilling to go there, I have a very clear, nope, not going there. And that means I don't really allow them in my mental, emotional, and physical space, unless I have to. And if I do have to do it for whatever reason, I have as much support and protection with me as I go into that space. I don't try to do it on my own. One of my greatest, I remember Yogananda talked, because I tried it once with a group of people, but I was just me, and it just pulled me down. I couldn't hold my space. And I was so relieved when I heard Yogananda said even the greatest gurus couldn't go and be a sole person around a lot of dark energy, that they'll get pulled down, that you need support. Everyone here, you need support when you're dealing with darkness, whether it's your own or external. We can't do it on our own. It will pull us down. The divine will always help us, but one way the divine helps us is by offering people who will support in that darkness. So have your boundaries. You can know that this person is a place that needs compassion. Often the monster or the person who's doing malicious intent needs more love than more intense love, but you do it from a distance. You do it where you're safe, physically, emotionally, and mentally. Does that make sense? So you have boundaries, very clear boundaries with people who are not safe to you. And they don't care that they're not safe to you. And in fact, they will try to convince you that they should be safe to you, and so they can have more impact on you. So we have to be strong in our boundaries, but as equally strong from a distance, showering them with love. I remember Reverend Mark Anthony Lord called it extra grace required. These are extra grace required for the people who are completely unconscious of the pain they are causing themselves and others. But sometimes, even the people who seem so other, there's a window open, and we want to make sure we're open to those open windows. So one of the great gifts of having Julian play sports for so many years is it put us in relationship with a lot of with people who I may not have ever met otherwise. Many of them had a very different worldview than Jack and I, and Julian, Julian's our kid, so he has his own worldview. Jack and I want him to have his own life, own thoughts, kind of. So Jack and I have our own worldview, and they often had different worldviews, but we were together in sports. This is about our kids, and so we developed these wonderful relationships with them, and incredibly kind and generous, and all these wonderful things. And then as this country became, more on the internet, and politics started dividing us more and more, I saw that they have very different ideas than we had of what was healthy. And I was shocked that some of these people were really mean. I mean, really, really mean about some of the things they were saying, cutting, and I thought, wow. So it seemed malicious and intentional, but I'd seen them already. I saw who they really are through our sports and through our conversations, and generous of hearts. I'm like, that's not who they really are. So opening up the conversation through spirit, because I knew how they identified as Christians. So through their Christian identity and talking about loving our enemy and loving our brothers and sisters who think differently, and I said, it felt vulnerable when I first said it, and then it actually became more normalized. But at first I said, when you say all those things about this group of people, you're actually talking about me and the people I love. So you're really attacking me. Do you know that you're doing that? And I think that surprised them because they're not bad people. When we're constantly unbelonging other people, you don't belong, we've just cut them off. So I was thinking about people of malicious intent. And I would say 90%, actually, if I was honest, I would say 95% of the people that I have challenges with, I don't think are intentionally malicious. They have their worldview for whatever their reasons are for having their worldview. But I don't think they're intentionally being malicious. It's we don't understand, we don't see things. And the only way we're gonna see things is if we have these conversations. So over the years, I've been having conversations with a few of these people, and the relationship has changed, and even how they've shown up has changed. Not their worldview, still they have their point of view, and I have my point of view, but now it's not with this condemnation, but knowing that we still belong to each other. Even though we have different perspectives, we still belong to each other. We have to stop unbelonging to one another. This became really clear to me as I shared a little last week about this relationship with my brothers that I hadn't realized. It's becoming more conscious, and it felt hurtful. And I was surprised by what's happened a couple times from various people, knowing saying, well, obviously they're not on the same page that you are, Harriet. Just let them go, just stop. And I'm like, I'm not going to let them go. They're my brothers. I love them, and they love me. There is this challenge, but they didn't even know. This is the point. They were hurting me without even knowing it. It will be it's a news flash to them. It wasn't like they were intentionally hurting me. It did have its impact on me just by them being them, just by being gregarious 3 boys in a family, and I felt lost, and I was shy, so I didn't speak up for myself. So there's all sorts of things playing at it, but there was no one to blame, and the answer is not cutting people off. It's about, let's have a conversation, and already things have been shifting like that. Because I went to a practitioner and was like, no, this is healing. We want healing, not disassociation. It's not transcend and exclude. It's transcend and include. We want to include as many people in our healing process as we possibly can, and that takes courage to have the conversations that make you feel vulnerable. Talking with my brothers, they were clueless. Like, what? And I feel like an idiot, well, you devastated me. But no, seriously, it has been painful, but the response has been wonderful too. But it takes courage. And it took me, by the way, because this is I've mentioned this before, and I'm going to mention it again. Well, goes back to the divine. The healing is always in the divine. So I told you the reason why I'm even in this thing with my brothers is because my grandmother came to me 20 years ago, told me to write an autobiography, wrote the autobiography, wrote it to my brothers, and suddenly all this stuff emerged that I didn't know was there. Again, nothing intentional. But look how that happened. My grandmother came to me 20 years ago and told me to do this. On the other side, she was on the other side of the veil. She knew that this pattern was in me that I didn't even see myself. I told you one of the things I used to love about Reverend Michael, he said, you don't have to seek out the things that you need to heal in your life. They will show up. They will show up. And all the resources needed to heal it will also be there to serve us when we are ready and when we are willing. So it took me from that time when she came to me 20 years, so I was willing, Harriet, nobody else, until I was ready, and then when I was ready, all the circumstances converged for that healing to happen. But that is why we trust, first and foremost, this divine inheritance of love and a good, that we live in a friendly universe. Everything in this universe is for us, is for our healing, and not just our healing, but all our friends and our family and all the people that we know, 95% of the people who are willing to do the work. That's just I don't care. Whatever percentage, working with the people who are willing to do the work with you. Let's do that. That's when no approval is needed because we're standing in the power and the presence of pure spirit. I am not doing this to make anyone else happy. I'm not doing this to get approval from my family, from my friends, from my spiritual community, from my mentors, from anybody but that divine presence within me. And that's all that is true for you. There is a divine presence within you that the more you give yourself to your divine presence, that voice in you, it's going to draw in people and situations that are specific to you. No one else may know it. But that presence within you knows it. And that's why we trust it with our whole heart, body, mind, and soul. We trust this divine love that loves us madly and passionately and wildly and sees every part of who and what we are. And it only wants us to heal. It only wants our good. And it only wants the good and the healing for all the people with whom we are connected who are willing to join us in that process. Then we are free. Every time we have that moment of vulnerability, vulnerability is the place of our greatest growth. Because the other part we're comfortable with. I can talk about that all day. The vulnerability, the reason what makes it vulnerable is we don't know. We've never been down this road before. I've never opened up this part. I've never shared, I don't mean we, any one of us, we never have shared this part of ourselves before. So that's what makes it vulnerable, but it's also the place of our greatest growth and our greatest gifts. As I was looking at all these talks on shame, and there were so many of them, physical disabilities, mental disabilities, abuse. I mean, it just covered the education. Everyone had a story, but in every story, in every situation, when they opened up about their shame, when they became vulnerable, when they opened up and shared, not only was there the healing because they received empathy and care, there was the emergence of some of their greatest gifts. So many of them use the phrase, and it's become my superpower. It's the place where I go out, and this woman's shame was that she had no education. And it was really sweet. She was a photographer, so she really learned photography. This is funny. She said, and I had no education, and I'm taking all these pictures of these CEOs and lawyers and doctors. And she said the most amazing thing happened. We'd be having this conversation, and I'd always be a little freaked out that they were talking, if they only knew how much I didn't know. And she said, but then I'd lift up my camera to start photographing them. She said, immediately they became totally vulnerable. You're being watched, you're being seen. Because what we all want to do is be seen. And so when we are vulnerable, What's happening is we are really being seen, as we've been talking about. The masks, the persona starts dropping away. The walls start dropping away. And even just taking it, well, maybe not in our kids' generation, take tons of pictures. They're amazing how comfortable they are with it. But I know I'm very uncomfortable when someone starts putting up their camera to take a picture. And I just like, what are they seeing? I can't protect myself anymore. I don't have my ability to hide. I have to be seen. We all have that. But when we learn more and more of who and what we really are and own it and feel whatever shame we might feel if a camera's in our face, what are we afraid they're going to see? What are we afraid that they're seeing right now? How am I not enough? That's the biggest one. Just imagine if we healed the whole world of not enoughness, how this planet would change in a second. When we begin to open our hearts to that and know that, we know our greatest gifts. Writing, art, singing, education. The professor that I told who has this phrase, that we are constantly unbelonging ourselves and unbelonging others. She is a professor of English. She's taken her classes out into the houseless, people without homes or houses, and is teaching them. She takes her English literature class, and she has them write things, and she has them read essays about shame and isolation, and then they start pouring out their heart in what they write. And a lot of them can't write very well, and they've never done it before. Our greatest vulnerabilities are our greatest gift to this planet. So may we feel the safety in divine light and divine love to be able to share from our heart, to share our gifts, and to heal first and foremost. For we are the divine inheritance of freedom, of joy, of creativity, of beauty. Those things are real, and they include all of us. And this isn't just for us as individuals. This is for everybody on this planet. May we participate in the healing of this planet. So things like what happened to Monica Lewinsky, to the young man who was cyberbullied, and we know there's so many stories. So that may end, that we no longer are willing to participate and to keep our mouth shut when we see that bullying happen. And we lead with our hearts. We lead with our love. We lead with that healing energy of divine peace. No approval needed. Let's just do it. Let's pray. No approval needed. This divine presence is already here. Doesn't even need to ask our permission or anything. It's just pure, infinite, oceanic love that pours in through and as all creative life. The galaxies upon galaxies upon galaxies and the billions and billions of stars. That first moment was a moment of love exploding into form. That first moment is right here and right now, exploding into form as each and every one of us in this room, online, in all the multi-dimensions of the universe. In every moment, this love is exploding itself into greater and greater expression and fulfillment. It is that healing light that is eternal, that holds us and cares for us and loves us beyond what we could ever humanly imagine. It sees and knows things that we can't even see and know, but all of it is held in the arms of love, of goodness. There's nothing to fear. The entire universe is for us. We feel it radiating and pulsating from every atom and cell of our beingness. We feel the eternality of our beingness, that it is absolute, that it is fearless, because there's nothing to ever die that is real. As we see those beautiful examples even of someone like a Jesus or a Gandhi or Martin Luther King, they're absolutely free still. They are still whole, perfect, and complete. Nothing can ever limit our our pure expression of who and what we are. And as we know this right here and about ourselves, we dissolve the places of fear. We dissolve the places of otherness, that anything could ever take away who and what we are. Nothing can ever take away from who and what we are. And as we know this about ourselves, we hold this here and now for our beautiful friend Pat, That even though she has transitioned to the other side of the veil, even though we may not see her physically in person or hear her voice in the way that we once did, we know that she is fully alive. She is still fully and completely being Pat in her beautiful, sparkly, full of love, joy, expressive, creative self. Pat is the inherent life of pure spirit. Nothing can ever take that away from her. Even now, she is fully expressing that in the other side of the veil. And we celebrate that. We celebrate her light. We celebrate her love, her unending goodness, her unending joy, her unending beauty, her unending creativity, her unending healing energy. Pat Coker is right here with us, now and forever, in our hearts, in spirit. And as we know this about Pat, we know this about all of our lives, that we are forever. No one or nothing can ever take that away. And so we open our hearts to whatever feels threatening to us, inside of us and outside of us. We allow the power and the presence of pure spirit, of the divinity within us, to do its work. We say yes. We say yes to this love. We say yes to this love that holds and embraces Jim Coker, her beautiful husband of 43 years, that on this side of the veil, he is fully expressed as who he is, that nothing is ever limiting him in his love of Pat and their relationship together, and that he has given this time to heal any place where that life might feel a little bit less beautiful without his sparkly Pat with him. And yet we know that the pure beauty of spirit is with him even now. The tenderness, the joy, all that she gave him is in his heart now and for all eternity. And so we bless him as whatever grief that is going through, and tenderness and sadness, we hold that in tenderness and care and compassion and comfort. And we hold her children, knowing that they are loved and surrounded by God's light and love, tenderness and compassion. And we celebrate all people on this beautiful community, Lighthouse community. We bless our beautiful children that are here today and that are on their way, and their teachers, their parents. We are all on this journey of becoming light, and greater light that includes all of our humanity, here, now, and forever. And so we just say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, God, for loving us beyond our wildest imagination, for loving all of us, all of who we are each individually, and loving all beings on this planet, all sentient life forming, loving all of us. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. In deep abiding peace and everlasting joy, we let it be now. I release this word. I completely let it go. And I invite you to join me now in saying, and so it is.
I walk in God in all I do. I walk in God in all that I say.